got this big company here, but you're also doing real estate investing, and you're also investing in Ternus. Where do you see the lessons of like the C-suite corporate world that like the everyday investor can actually use? Like, what are lessons from that world that are not being translated over?
Well, or should be translated over, right? And that's discipline. I think that, because of the infrastructure and the size of the corporation and all the years in business and all that kind of thing, there's just a lot of discipline that goes into running a business. And I think Tim and I were talking about it earlier. I mean, at heart, we are both entrepreneurs. And I think the important thing about your question is really taking those disciplines and applying it to your entrepreneurial endeavor. Otherwise it's hard to stay on track. And I don't know if I'm allowed to quote Kent Clothier, but I was at the boardroom and I heard Kent say something that really resonated with me, and that was that in order for the CEO to thrive, help me with that.
The hustler has to die.
Yeah. So, I was impressed with something that I heard Kent Clothier say. And that has to do with, in order for the CEO to thrive, the hustler has to die. And that's hard, when you're an entrepreneur. But I really believe that Kent was right about that. It was something that really resonated with me when I was in the room. And I think back to your question, it's taking the disciplines of this big company and applying it to our entrepreneurial endeavors so that there are guardrails around them. You've got goals that you've set, and you're working hard with great discipline every day to accomplish that.
Yeah, and I like that quote from Kent. That's the first time I ever heard it, so thank you. But because through this podcast, through going to SMU, my whole thing is like, what are lessons I can get from other people and apply to growing my business? And it's just the discipline aspect of it. But one conversation we were having earlier, about an hour ago, was the epiphany I had about 2 months ago. I don't think we've talked about this yet, but it's a far different thing to start a business and then lead a business. And like being a C-suite of like a big company versus having to train and invent processes from the ground up. And they're just two different skill sets. But that doesn't mean you can't learn from either side of that.
I think though, like I look at what we've done with Ternus, and really 9 months or 10 months of funding loans, we've gone from 0 to 100, and spoken to thousands of people in the process, and made hundreds of mistakes, and probably missed things we should have caught and caught things that didn't matter. And the plan changes a lot. And I think the reason a lot of businesses die, 90-something% of startups fail, is they don't have a hustler to lead it. I think, to build on what Charlie said, but go a different direction, the hustler may not have to die, but the hustler may have to go sit his ass in another chair. You sit in the corner office over there, you still work here, you are still a hustler, but your son Taylor's the CEO. My plans at Ternus is within the first 2 years to hire a CEO. I will still be a hustler, but I know I can't be in charge of the day-to-day because that hustler mentality, and not all businesses are going to have this luxury, so you got to change if you're still going to be the guy in the chair. But that hustler mentality gets you to the right point, and I think the magic is going to be for these entrepreneurs knowing when it's right to either change who you are or change your role.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I got to jump in on this because I'm still a hustler, right? And you and I have talked about this. I love being a hustler.
Yeah.
Right? I love what I do. And I like the way you framed it. You've just got to move into another seat. I love this line, a man has to know his limitations, right? And one of the biggest challenges that so many entrepreneurs have is not recognizing what their limitations are and acknowledging it. And just, in the time that we've been working together in Ternus in the last year, there's been 15 times where you've said, I'm not the right guy for this, and we went out and hired somebody or whatever, found somebody else to fill that role. I think it's a really big challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs. You got to recognize what your limitations are, and don't, it's nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, there's strength in knowing, where you get energy and put your energy against that hustling. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the lessons I've had to learn is even though in my mind, sweating, carrying, doing the hard labor, doing the work, in my mind, I'm thinking I'm leading from the front, but that may not be the best for the company. Also, one of the things I had to learn about that was being okay with not being the guy that's always carrying stuff and not always sweating and not doing all the things with the team in terms of the labor aspect. And I used to be self-conscious because I'm like, what is the team going to think if I'm not there helping them load the truck? What are they going to think if I'm not there setting up? And I've had to grow and be like, you know what? I need them to trust that if I'm not helping, it's because I'm writing an email. I'm doing something more important than the manual aspects of loading a truck.
And I'll just flip it on you because the problem is actually going to be in the back of your brain. And I've watched him screw this up this year, and I've watched me screw it up. Just last night, I emailed my leadership team, like, I'm not hearing enough. I've asked y'all to handle things, but maybe you need to copy me on more emails. I know there's a lot going on, but I'm not sure what all's going on.
Right.
But that comes from me saying, look, y'all need to handle this. I'm paying you. And he, several times this year, I need to be left off the tactical stuff. And then a month later, well, I didn't know that was happening. You said to take you. So what happens is we all go through these seasons, and it's okay. That's what the entrepreneur has to understand. You are going to feel like I hired so-and-so and they should handle this and I don't want to be bothered with it. And then you're going to find yourself like, holy crap, did they put the camera up? And that entrepreneur in you is never going to die. You just have to learn how to kind of put him in timeout and keep him away from things.
I got another perspective on this, though, that there's a part of that you don't ever want to lose, right? So leaders eat last, servant leaders. That's what I'm hearing both of you guys say. I know Tim well enough, and there's a lot of people that'll follow him straight into a trench because they know that, he will pick up the camera. He will have their back. And I think that there's a part of that you don't want to lose. And I'm not suggesting that you carry the camera, because what people need is they need to see you at the top of the mountain, with a light at the top of, on your hat, so that they can see where to follow. And they'll get in line, but they're also going to know that you're not going to be afraid that if you got to take a few steps down that mountain and carry, a suitcase or whatever it is up, that you're their guy and they're going to do that. And they will follow you. They will follow you to the end of the earth if you do that. So there's a part of it that I say you don't want to lose.
January, February 2014, we just wrapped up the biggest REI Expo ever. 1,600 people, 2.5-3 day event at Gaylord, Texan. And the entire staff was gone, all the attendees gone. Tim and I were in the back loading the truck by ourselves. And I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
Yeah, but again though, it's just like 6 hours before, we're both on stage in front of thousands of people, and we're like, oh, look at these people. It's like, and then I forgot what the joke was, but we joked about just being the absurdity of literally.
But that's where you were. That's where you were at that time.
Yeah.
The other beautiful thing is that because people will follow you for so long and appreciate your leadership, and this is really, and I think it's just the season that I'm at in my life, I recognize that there are just people that are better at loading that dock than I am. They're going to get more boxes in, per square foot than I'm going to be able to accomplish. And my talents are better served, somewhere else. So
Yeah, to your point,
Yeah.
that's also probably a failure of leadership and planning on our part. But I choose to look at it as a positive.
We had hundreds of people here and dozens of volunteers, and yet we did not think about
This is true.
the final step of loading stuff up.